Hello everybody, I'm Colin D. Ellis and welcome to the Culture and Coffee podcast, where every episode I discuss a new topic of workplace culture and provide some insights and some practical things for you to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe and to share with people who you may think would be interested. Okay, let's get on with today's episode. Hello everybody, it's Colin Ellis here and welcome to another episode of the Culture and Coffee podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about building a culture of kindness. Before we get into that, look at the coffee, which is a Peruvian coffee from Sacred Grounds in Melbourne, Australia. Peruvian with notes of honey, macadamia and plum. Who knew? Who knew that coffee could be so tasty? Not me. Somebody asked me about this the other day. They asked me about when did I give up my English roots and stop drinking tea and become a coffee drinker? And the answer is, I haven't given up my English roots. I drink tea in the afternoon, coffee in the morning. Jobs are good. And there are rules about these things, people. There are rules. Culture of kindness. I still think kindness, there's a lack of it in the workplace. I think that I still think kindness is seen as sometimes I think kindness is seen as weakness. I don't know if there's that's something that you witness. It's like, stop being so kind. Why do you have to be so kind all the time? And you know, it really isn't a weakness. Kindness is a demonstration of strength, and I'd love to see more of it. Work is often just very, very transactional. And listen, as an optimistic realist, I make that sound like a religion. I should start a religion, shouldn't I, around optimism, realism. Are you in optimism, realism, devotees? Nearly said disciples then it would become a religion. I recognise that for most people, just work is work, right? Particularly when you're younger, work is work. Although not if the research is to be believed. That younger employees are looking for a culture of kindness. They're looking for empathy. In fact, it's the number one skill they're looking for in managers, empathy. And, empathy really starts by taking the time to build a relationship with somebody. And for me, that's key to kindness, I think, is building a relationship. And, throughout the podcast, I'll provide lots of practical things, that I've been on the receiving end of during my career, and I've tried to pay it forward. And one of the first things that I recommend when people say, how do we become more kind in our team? It's actually just take the time to build a relationship. Listen, build a relationship without it being a transaction, without you wanting anything in return. Is just take the time to have a conversation with someone, find out about their life, what are their interests, what's their background, what's their experience, listen to some of their stories. I think that for me is the kind of foundation of kindness is when we actually do take the time to build a relationship. But yeah, I still think it's seen as a bit fluffy. Somebody used their phrase in a message to me recently, woo-woo. And I immediately wrote down that I should write the blog, Culture's a Bit Woo-Woo. And this is still a bit of that as well, right? For those of you who listen to the podcast, I'd like to think that anybody listening to the podcast is just like, absolutely not. We recognise just how important it is. There's very little that's woo-woo about it. It's, the most important thing. And yet there are still some people out there, mainly people of my age, it has to be said, in their 50s and above. What is this culture stuff? It's all a bit woo-woo, isn't it? A bit woo-woo, woo-woo. No, it's not. It's crucially important. I think as well, kindness is seen as a very personal thing, rather than it being embedded and entwined into the way that people work with each other. So, throughout the course of the podcast, I'm going to talk about, just provide a little bit of an understanding of what it means to be kind. And to help people recognize that it's a choice. It really is a choice. And much like all choices, it's something that that needs to be deliberate. It's not something that you want to mandate. It's not like you're going to go into the office and go, right, everyone today just needs to be kind. I'm not sure if we have a kindness day. The Americans probably have kindness day, but every day needs to be kindness day. But I think if you are of the mind that it is all a bit woo-woo, let me just tell you this, that it's been demonstrated by research that kindness contributes to business success. And these aren't, kind of results that have been just dreamt up by kindness consultants. There probably is a kindness consultant somewhere. It's much more reputable scientists have actually looked at this and said, okay, well, what are the benefits of kindness? So kindness essentially is a very human quality. It's about empathy to feel into another person, to get to know somebody, to be able to spot their reactions, kind of how they feel. It kind of involves listening, empathy. It's not all about you, but it is about giving a little bit of yourself away as well. So vulnerability is very, very important. Brené Brown's been talking about this for years. It's kind of empathy, compassion, really trying to understand the motivations that people have, I think is important. But, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, there is what's meaningful connection. So every time I start a culture workshop, I've mentioned this before, over a day or 2 days, it all starts with very human connection. Who's the person that you work with? Where have they come from? What's their background? Come from in terms of education? What's their upbringing? These are done in quiet kind of environments. You're not asking everyone to stand up in a room and introduce themselves. I still see that happening. No. The group kind of creates the dynamic where it becomes easy to share those things. And I think, at heart, as humans, our biology is such that we want to create connections with other people. We recognize that we do our best work when we feel a sense of fulfillment. And in a team environment, that very much comes from, being able to work well with others, being able to share how you feel in a safe environment. Oh, my mate Simon wrote a great blog, you can't tell people it's safe. Safety comes when the group agrees what that looks like. That's when we get that sense of fulfillment. Everybody wants to perform at the highest possible level. No one wants to have a rubbish day at work. No one wants to feel like they've let the team down. No one wants to feel that empty feeling that we've all experienced of just having just a real rubbish day where we kind of got nothing did and we allowed ourselves to procrastinate. And kindness can counter lots of those things. When we put time, thought and effort into kindness and developing kindness within the team, it improves engagement. And engagement is proven to improve productivity and results. It improves retention of key staff. People want to work in an environment where people have compassion and empathy for each other. It improves innovation as well, because people feel that they can come up with an idea without it being kind of just tossed on the scrap heap, or rejected or cancelled in any way. That leads to employee morale. We feel good as employees. It reduces our stress because we don't have that fear of working with other people. And it leads to increased job satisfaction. And when you've got a group of people who are satisfied with the work that they're doing, business results flow. And this is something I've been talking about for a long, long time, but I want to be really, really careful. It would be easy for me to come on a podcast or a blog every week and go, come on, culture's been proven to be successful, and so what I seek to do is to try and break it down so that people can kind of come to the realization, sometimes in their own time, oh yeah, that's the missing ingredient in our culture. That's, for us to become a real high functioning, high performing team, that's the thing that's missing. And this week it's around kindness. I think, we're quick to judge as humans. We're quick to judge other people. We're quick to judge people's motivations. We're quick to judge people's approaches. I try my best. I'm not a perfect human by any stretch of the imagination. Otherwise, this would be the perfect human podcast. There probably is the perfect human podcast. I'm launching another podcast, by the way, which I know you're sat there thinking, Colin, what the world desperately needs is another podcast. But I'll tell you about that at the end if I remember. And then if I don't, I'll put it in the notes. I try my best to think the best of people. I had a guy who was very cross with me recently in a shop, and I just, because I kind of changed my mind about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to buy, and he was there tutting because I went back to get something else, came back while the person at the checkout was helping me bag all the stuff, then changed my mind again, and he came back and he tutted, and it'd be very easy to go, dude, what? Listen, I can't change my mind. Like, she's still bagging the groceries anyway. It's not like you're right there waiting for me. But, I was just like, listen, he's just a little bit cross. He see me running backwards and forwards, almost like I don't know what I'm doing, which at the time I didn't. And so I just apologized to him. I was like, listen, I'm really, really sorry. It looks like I keep changing my mind. That's because I do. And he was then like, oh, it's totally okay. It's fine. And so I think, trying to think the best of people is a really good thing to do. But often what happens is that kindness is lacking in organizations because of a number of different factors. And those factors then affect how individuals feel. And that's how we end up with the kindness. Someone said to me once, the kindness was drained out of this organization a long time ago, almost like the blood was drained out of it. And I listen, I get that. So, some of the factors that I've seen that drain kindness from an organization is where there's too much competition. Often when I work with sales teams, there's heaps and heaps of competition, and you hear things like, oh, it's a dog eat dog at the minute. And that's never great. It's not even a great analogy. But what happens is we value the individual over the team. And it becomes about personal targets. When I wrote Culture Fix in 2019, I talked about how key performance indicators on the individual are really, really bad for culture. And there's nothing that's happened since then that's changed my mind. Because we kind of give the individual a target, and it becomes all about personal gain. And when it becomes all about individual personal gain, we do that at the expense of the team. And we lose that sense of what it means to be kind, compassionate and empathetic towards another person. Because we've got this goal that we need to hit, or I need to hit, and I'm going to tread over people to actually get there. The second sign that I see where kindness is drained is where there's just too much stress and too much anxiety. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. Is you've got this, super task focus, and people are like, I've got 50 things to do. Now that might be because they've got a lack of people, a lack of resources. You've got managers saying we need to do more with less, stupid stuff like that. But when people are stressed, when people are under pressure, and it may be something external, which is why I say, try not to judge people's motivations, because they might have something going on that you don't actually know about. But in high stress, high pressure, then kindness. And this is often where you'll hear sharp words spoken, so much pressure. And it's easy to use it as an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's very, very genuine. So when people are stressed, ultimately we're not being our best selves, and that generally comes out. And we don't want it to, it just does. The third reason, which I should have mentioned at the start really, but toxic culture. There's no kindness whatsoever in a toxic culture. In fact, part of the reason that it's toxic is because there's no kindness. And what you end up with is just the worst kind of behavior. And the worst thing about toxic cultures, and I've seen this once or twice in the almost 10 years I've been working for myself, is that sometimes somebody will hold out an olive branch to try and get people out of the toxic culture. It might be a flower of peace, metaphorically, whatever it might be. And that kindness is literally thrown back in their face, saying things like, we don't need any of that fluffy stuff now. That's not what we need. We need discipline. We need to get some shit done. That's what we need. We don't want to sit around kumbayaing with a guitar around a fire. Any of that sound familiar to you? Kumbayaing. There's that woo-woo stuff again. And yet those people seem to thrive in a toxic culture and take everybody with them. And so even those people who want to be the antidote to that, unfortunately, are trampled all over. Poor communication, another reason that I've seen. Often when people don't think about the other person and communicate in a way that they're not expecting or in a way that's not motivational, which of course links to empathy and a lack of empathy. Because if you don't have empathy for another person, then you're not really thinking about the words that you're using and how you're communicating. You're just doing it in the way that you think that you're doing. And that can lead to conflict. That can lead to disagreements. And as a result, all of the kindness drains away. And then the last one, which often isn't talked about that much, but it's a very real human problem, is insecurity. I think we're in times of great change, and I worked on a pretty big culture change piece of work not so long ago, and many people felt insecure because they knew the organization, to be fair, was trying to do it in the right way. They knew that there was a bit of a restructure coming, an operating model, and what they wanted to do was address the culture first so that they were able to keep hold of their good people and involve people in the sense of the future. It was absolutely the right thing to do. But there was a real sense of insecurity going into the room. And so consequently, that insecurity really, led to, I would say behaviors that, people didn't really want to display. They just did. It was unkind behavior, a sharp tongue, or ignoring people, or kind of using stress as a weapon. I'm really stressed here. Which, I understand. So there's some of the conditions that often drain kindness from a culture. So how do you go about building a culture of kindness? Well, like I said, if you get the opportunity to bring people together, get them to share personal stories, and then get people to talk about what it means to be kind. I like the title, It's Cool to Be Kind. It is cool to be kind. It's really cool to be kind. Most parents bring their kids up to be kind. Very few people are like, right, you need to be a toxic idiot who everybody hates. Right? Although some people's kids. God, it sounded so judgy, didn't it? Didn't mean it to. But the fact of the matter is when children leave school, for the most part, they're not unkind, toxic individuals. But they step into the workplace and then they just become part of the prevailing culture. Now, if that prevailing culture is one that values kindness, that values team building, that values relationship building, that knows how to set expectations in the right way such that it means that difficult conversations can be had, then that's where you have a consistent culture of kindness. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? Everybody has that. So often people say, well, what are some practical examples that you see when you've got a culture of kindness? Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a brain dump, I suppose, of what I've seen and what I've actioned. A lot of the things, I tried to do myself were things that are done, kind of towards me. There was when I first arrived in Melbourne in 2013, there was a little social venture coffee shop where you could pay it forward. So you could buy a coffee for somebody who was homeless. And what they would do is then they would go out and take coffees to people sleeping rough on the streets, or they would give them a coffee card where they could get a free coffee. It was absolutely fantastic. And so I distinctly remember one day the guy in front of me not only purchased a coffee for, I can't remember the name of the actual initiative. It was like Coffee for the Homeless or something like that. He also bought the next three people behind him. He bought us all a coffee as well. And so I thought that was absolutely fantastic. It's something that I did at the start of the year. And these are things that you do without expecting anything back. He didn't make a point of actually telling the three of us that he'd bought our coffee. There was three of us together in a team. He didn't tell us. And so I got to the counter, I was like, okay, I want one of these, one of these. I just had like a normal filter coffee, and then somebody had some, I have a half calf, double decaf with a twist of lemon or something ridiculous like that. And the guy behind the counter said, yeah, that dude just paid for the coffee. Now, he was waiting for his coffee, so I went up and just said, thank you so much. And he was like, it's perfectly fine. But he wasn't going to actually say anything. And I did it recently for someone in a cafe. I just thought that's a really cool thing to do. But it doesn't always have to involve money. You can recognize achievement. You can say thank you. You can ask people if they're okay. You can actively listen. And by that, I mean, put away all devices. Can't actively listen when you're distracted by something. Actively listen and just give people that opportunity to talk. You don't have to provide a solution. Often people don't want the solution. They just want the ability to talk. You can say please and thank you. It'd be nice if you use some manners. Send in thank you cards. One of my friends, Lisa, she's just awesome at doing this stuff. She'll send little gifts. For those of you who know me, I have a paisley tattoo. And she will just be in a shop, see something that she likes that's paisley, and then she'll just send it to me, and it'll just arrive in the post. And I'm like, this is just amazing. Send me a notebook, like a blank notebook, because I like keeping notes and writing notes. This paisley notebook's absolutely beautiful. It really was. But you can send little thank you cards. That's something I copied off a previous manager of mine in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's something I used to have a box of thank you cards, and I would just leave a thank you card on somebody's desk. But the most basic thing that you can do is to return a call or an email. Email ghosting seems to be one of the biggest issues in organizations right now. And people will use the excuse that they're swamped by emails. And it is an excuse, because you could change that. Go back and listen to the many podcasts and the many things that I've written about emails. But the simplest thing you can do is to give somebody your time. If you can return a call or an email in a prompt manner, I think that just says to people, you're important. I see you. I hear you. That's just something that you can do. As along with, and this is the big one for me, is when you actually take the time to build culture. When people care about each other, they will take responsibility for things that aren't theirs. We recognize when we're struggling. We recognize when people are struggling. We ask them if they want help. Sometimes they'll say no because they feel like they're being a failure. We have to reassure them. Again, this is being kind. It's not about that. I have some time to help you with your what can I help you with? Too often in some cultures I say, oh, well, they never ask for help. And I always say, well, did you ask them if they needed help? And then did you ask them again? And there's a condition called the helper's high. And the helper's high is generally one of those feelings that we get because the brain releases oxytocin when we do something good for another person. And what that does is it really helps to lift our spirits. If you've ever done any kind of charity work, if you've ever been kind to anybody at any time, that oxytocin, it just lights us up. And this is not woo-woo. It's not something to be feared. It's not something that's weak. Being kind is a sign of strength. And wouldn't it be great if we saw more of it in our cultures? Now, before I go, I just wanted to mention a new podcast that I'm launching this week. In fact, we just put the trailer live. It's Thursday, the 7th of March, as I'm recording this. Got a busy weekend ahead. And so the trailer's just gone live, and I am working with Kath Bishop. Now, Kath is an Olympic medalist. She's based in the UK. She has a fantastic perspective. She's a former diplomat, so she's worked in lots of different countries, lots of different cultures. She writes regularly for the Guardian newspaper over in the UK. And every 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at a different news story and asking what people can learn from that. It's called Inside Out Culture, and it will be available now wherever you get your podcasts. So head on over there, hit subscribe, click the notification button to get notified. And of course, tell everybody about it. It'll be slightly different because it'll be the two of us sharing ideas on what we think, but we'll be very much sticking to what's the story in the media and what people can learn. So I hope to see you over there as well as staying here. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Ta-ra for now. Thanks for listening to today's podcast. If you'd like to find out more about how I can help you transform the culture of your team, head to my website at www.colindellis.com.